Afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on tips and tools for using ARP HCY funds to support students experiencing homelessness. We are so glad that you joined us. My name is Erin Patterson. I'm Director of Education Initiatives for Schoolhouse Connection, and I will be facilitating today's session along with my colleague Karen Rice, who I will turn it over to in a few minutes. Before I do, I want to go over some housekeeping items. First, this webinar will last for 1 hour. And this session is being recorded. You will receive a link to the recording as follow-up after the webinar, and we'll also post it on Schoolhouse Connection's archived webinars page. We ask that you type any questions you have into the Q&A panel. We will do our best to get to all questions during our session today and try and respond to any that are lingering after the fact. Let me introduce Schoolhouse Connection. If you're not familiar with us, we are a national nonprofit advocacy organization, and we are committed to overcoming homelessness through education. And we work at this goal on a number of different levels. We engage in both federal and state policy and advocacy. We work with state education agencies, school districts, early childhood providers, institutions of higher education, and others to provide a wide range of practical assistance for identifying and supporting children and youth experiencing homelessness. And we always say the jewel in our crown is our network of young scholars who we are privileged to support, both with financial scholarship assistance as they pursue their post-secondary education, as well as case management support from our team. We encourage you to check out our website, schoolhouseconnection.org. There you can sign up for our newsletter, which we put out about once a week, and it is filled with our latest resources, tips, tools, and announcements from the field. In just a little while, we are going to turn it over to Jackie Gigliotta. But before we do, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Karen Rice, who will walk us through some reminders about ARP HCY and the latest Dear Colleague letter from the U.S. Department of Education.
Thanks, Erin. Well, just to give you some updates, you probably have seen this, but of course we like to refer back to this as our most recent guidance. This was released September 12th of 2023 from the Department of Education. And one of the main points of the updated letter is to really ask states to expedite that funding and modifying their procedures to be able to use the funds as quickly as possible and to get those dispersed to meet student needs. So we encourage you to, if you have not already, to take this letter and to just share it really broadly with those in your LEA or those that you're working with that are involved in those funding and spending decisions to really encourage that dispersal of the funds. So some of the highlights, and again, this might not be new information for you, but we want to make sure that we're highlighting this updated information from this Dear Colleague letter. First of all, that motel stays are now allowable longer than 3 days, if reasonable and necessary, of course, allowing children and youth to attend school. And so really making sure that students have that school stability so that they have longer than 3 days in those motel stays as needed. In addition, regarding transportation, the purchase of vehicles for specialized transportation of children and youth experiencing homelessness is an allowable cost. And as well, we know transportation is really difficult right now. And so the letter also highlights reimbursing parents and or youth for gas costs, purchasing prepaid gas cards, and even paying for limited car repairs when those costs are reasonable and necessary to facilitate transportation so that children and youth can attend and participate in school. Providing food assistance is a question we've gotten a lot recently. And so the letter does outline that is a reasonable and necessary cost to assist students to really take advantage of those extracurricular activities and any educational activities when food is not available to the student through other sources. So of course, we know that our students can receive or should need to receive free school meals. And so anything that students would do above and beyond that, if they're participating, for example, in extracurricular activities or in other sorts of educational programming, making sure that they've got access to that food support is an allowable use of funds. The letter also highlights early childhood education and really focusing on our young children birth to 5 who are not formally enrolled in the LEA, but are experiencing homelessness in the LEA. And so this looks like a lot of different things, including transitions to kindergarten, As an example, helping students and families connect to screenings or referrals, any activities that really help provide those early intervention services. So to make sure families have access to those services, including the transportation to those. And so if families are needing to access early intervention services or the screening process, and transportation is a barrier, we want to make sure that we are removing that barrier. And so using these funds as a way to do that. So those are a few examples of the allowable activities with early childhood. On the other end of the spectrum, with our students who are transitioning into post-secondary opportunities, the funds can also be used to assist youth or their parents and guardians with completion of the FAFSA or other college and career readiness opportunities. So this might include providing or adding staff hours for assistance, so really increasing the capacity and the availability of staff to be working with students. It could include paying for college application expenses, registration fees, any kinds of preparation materials, exams that students need, or other fees associated with that process of applying for college. And then in addition to that, hiring graduation coaches or paying stipends to school counselors to really kind of dig in and help our students to stay on track toward graduation and to do that post-secondary planning. That might include conducting transcript audits to help award partial credits and ensure, again, that students are on track toward graduation. And so those are some allowable uses that are really highlighted and specifically named in this updated letter. So wanting to make sure that you've got access to all of those updates. And Erin, I will turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Karen. We encourage you all to check out more about the updated Dear Colleague letter, as well as allowable uses of American Rescue Plan, homeless children and youth funds on our website. And some of those resources are linked in these slides, which you will also receive a copy of as follow-up to today's session. But with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so that we can have a conversation with Jackie. Now, Jackie, I want to invite you in, and first would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us about your district, where you're located, your district size, and about the number of identified students that you're working with.
Thank you. I'm Jackie Gigliotta. I'm a school social worker, but also the McKinney-Vento liaison in my district. I work for Greece Central School District. Greece is in, it's a first-ring suburb outside of the city of Rochester in upstate New York, so kind of between Syracuse and Buffalo. Our district has about 11,000 students enrolled, and I've been their liaison here for over 10 years. And we probably, like most districts, have seen an increase in numbers of students identified. In the last couple of years, we've identified approximately 200 students as McKinney-Vento eligible. This year, we've just finished the first quarter, the first 10 weeks of our school year, and we are up close to 150 right now, which tells me we're going to certainly pass by the average 200 mark that we've been in the past. One of the great things that's happened for us is we've gotten a strong mental health team, which has really helped support the work that I do and the support to the families and students that we are working with that are McKinney-Vento eligible. Did you ask me how I identify too? Was that part of this?
Yeah, if you could just tell us a little bit about how that works.
When I talk about McKinney-Vento eligibility to the district, to staff and administrators in the district, I always try to think about, like, there's two prongs for us. There's the students that are already our students who experience an episode of a housing loss and become McKinney-Vento eligible. And so we support and identify needs around what it is that they have. But I think the other side that's important to remember for us is the hard work that our registration staff does when a new family or student presents at registration who may be McKinney-Vento eligible. That is a piece that we've spent a lot of time to make sure that everybody's on the same page about what that process looks like and how to make sure that we're approaching, in either situation, families with respect to their personal situations, and making sure that we're paying attention to things like, where's the conversation happening and who's asking the questions, and are the kids in the room maybe when the parents are being asked the questions, and giving parents an opportunity to be as private as they can, so we can get as much support as possible for whatever it is that they might need.
That's really helpful to hear. Thank you so much. And I know, just want to acknowledge those increases in numbers that you're seeing. Certainly, that is a trend we are seeing. And I'm wondering if you could tell us then a little bit about the needs of your students experiencing homelessness that you're seeing.
I think for us, we still see things that we saw and really the height of COVID. We see, families regularly telling us that they need help with food pantries and food resources. We have students, actively taking part in both free breakfasts and free lunches. Many families are telling us they need childcare. Before school or after school childcare. So we've been working really hard to try to partner with local childcare providers, and we have an on-campus childcare program that is available to families who have students in the district as well. I think we always see tutoring and extra support academically as a need for all students, certainly students who are McKinney-Vento eligible who may have missed school, or we may know they will continue to miss school. We certainly have families who unfortunately are just in this pattern of looking for resources from the county and not feeling like they have enough, and then being forced to move, which creates more absences and a delay in getting transportation to the new place. And so I think that in itself has always been, the academic piece has always been a huge need for our students. I think we also talked with families about what would make things easier. What do you need? We've heard a lot of parents talk about, groceries, of course, and just household supply thing. I had a parent that said to me, I really need pots and pans, or I really need dishes. I can't eat off paper. It's so expensive to eat off paper. And laundry, we have had a lot of families tell us that laundry is a need. And we've had students tell us that they are not coming to school because they don't have clean clothes.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful to hear. And so then we know that we have this historic investment of American Rescue Plan funds, ARP HCY. And so how are you using your ARP HCY funds to meet some of those needs? And then to the extent you can, we would love for you to share about the process of getting that spending approved in your district.
We have ARP funds that are that's targeted towards a few different locations in our district right now. We are supporting some of that before and after school care for McKinney-Vento eligible students. And what's really terrific about it is it's in the buildings. So if you're a second grader and you attend Holmes Road Elementary, but you're temporarily housed, you get transportation in the morning from the home you're at into the building, and then you stay in the morning before school care. You have a snack and some social time and some fun stuff, and then when the school day begins, you really are just walk down the hallway by the staff right into your classroom. So that for us has been probably one of the most beneficial pieces for families. And the fact that families are getting it for free feels amazing to them. And it's allowed, parents to work really, or be in school or whatever it is that they are doing with their schedule that prevents them from being able to be with their child in the morning. We created an arrangement with a local laundromat that many of our families who might be staying in a friend's or family home said to us, even though there's laundry here and it's free, it's hard to get my kids' laundry done because my friend who owns this home is doing their child's laundry and their family's laundry. So we created a partnership with a local laundromat here. They use, and I don't know if this is standard across most laundromats, but they use an app to have their clients come in and use the machines, the washers and the dryers. So a parent would need to download the app, and then we created cards, almost like prepaid cards, and I give them to the parents, and then they take that card and load the numbers on the card into their app the same way they would load a credit card into the app, and allows them to not only have free laundry services, but I think for those parents, I've had two parents tell me it allows them to feel like everybody else in the laundromat. Nobody really knows how you're paying on your app, and I think there's some dignity and some pride that goes with that feels good. We've also used money to purchase laundry supplies because we know how expensive those are as well. So families are getting, you know, like a kit that has a laundry basket and bleach and detergent and dryer sheets and all the things. So it helps them also cut down on any funding that they might have had to put out of their own pocket to pay for the supplies that are needed for laundry. The other store card purchase that we have facilitated here is with the local Goodwill, and they have a number of stores across the region, and they do have a store right here in the town that our school is in. And we prepaid cards with the Goodwill, Office of Finger Lakes Goodwill. And so parents, when we have parents who need things like dishes, silverware, pots and pans, clothing for sure, but also I've had parents buy furniture. I had a parent for $50 bought a love seat, a really nice and good condition love seat at Goodwill. So it's allowed parents who are reestablishing a residence after a housing loss to get a little bit of a start on some of the things that they need in their home for their kids. As far as the process here, we worked with our financial department, and I think for their sake, they were really primarily focused around two pieces. One, you know, was the spending that we were going to ask for allowable under the regulations? And then two, what ways are we going to use to internally track? So for example, the laundry cards or the store cards, there was they had put out a process to us about how we needed to track those things. And what we're using right now is a tracking sheet that allows for the card number on it. And then we're using student IDs as much as we can in place of parent or student names, just to provide like another layer of privacy for families. And we do ask parents to sign a receipt that they have received the gift card and then the amount that the gift card was. We also looked into, we haven't spent any of this yet, but I think we're going to look more into the Walmart. Walmart has like a use restricted gift card that you can purchase. So there's a lot of limits around what can and can't be purchased with the use restricted card. And the same thing with a gas station. There's a few gas stations here locally that are selling fuel only cards. And so when we have parents that are driving kids to school or coming in for like a CSE meeting or an event at the school in the evening, and we've been able to give them gas cards, that's been a card of choice for our administrators here because of the use restriction around fuel only.
That is a lot. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know to our audience, one of the reasons we invited Jackie to share is because of all of those varied uses of store cards and ways that you have found in your district, Jackie, to appease those administrative concerns while still meeting the needs of families. And so I'm so glad that you were able to share that. I have two more questions for you, and then we'll open it up to our audience for any questions that they might have. And so I would love to know, you know, you're using ARP HCY really well, but would love for you to talk about what other funding sources are available to you, and how have you been able to utilize those sources to support your students experiencing homelessness?
We have a strong community schools team here in our district, which is really something that has had a profound impact, I think, on students with McKinney-Vento eligibility, because what we're finding is that community schools team has in each building a designated staff person or persons who can really just pay some extra attention to kids about what it is that they need, build those stronger relationships. You know, as the liaison, I don't have strong relationships with all of the 200 students, obviously, but with the community school staff, that has been terrific because they're building relationships and they're working on a lot of basic needs, you know, coats and boots and mittens and hats, as well as food resources, and helping us to make sure that referrals are being made in a timely fashion for families who need support and are not sure where to turn. So that I think that the community schools team as a whole has been a really great support for this work that we're doing with students that are in temporary housing. We do have a large mental health team that also supports students and families, and I partner with them very regularly around, the pieces of their care that I can do, and then the pieces of the care for these students and the academic pieces that are happening like in the buildings themselves with the teachers and the administrators there.
That is really helpful to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that. And then we also would love to know, as I'm sure you're aware, ARP HCY funds will end at some point. And so would love to know how you're thinking about sustaining all of these amazing programs and resources that you've been able to offer.
Well, I think that's the million-dollar question, literally. What some of the preliminary conversations we've had have just been around how we can partner some more with the community schools team and whatever resources we might be able to kind of share to not have to repeat and duplicate. We've tried to engage with our local community as well, because our county, although, has some support services, maybe doesn't have everything that every family needs, but we've tried to make sure that whatever services are out there, families are aware of and engaged in, and having transportation to and from, and having the access to those resources. We would hope that there might be some grant funding that can continue for us to allow us to keep providing at least some of the things that we're doing right now. So hoping that there's a lot of more ideas coming around some of this ability to sustain.
I hear you. We are right there with you. Would love to open it up to our audience, excuse me, for questions. And there have been a couple questions that have come into me privately that I want to share with you, Jackie. The first is, people are just so curious about the process details of how, for store cards in particular, and how you're able to make some of this work. And so would love for you to walk us through a little bit more, if you could, how you were able to partner with your business office administrative folks in terms of talking with them to actually get the buy-in for things like store card usage and the Goodwill and laundromat cards.
I think for me, the beginning of that process really has to start with finding out what families need, because it's, we can all pretend we know what someone needs, but I think to hear from families what they need. We spent some time last year, particularly in the spring, having some informal focus groups with families, just asking them things about what it is that might make their lives easier, might make getting their kids to school easier, might make, dealing with their current circumstances easier. And so we made like a wish list about things that we wanted to try and get for families, or try and provide for families. One of the biggest things that we heard was a vehicle, and that is still on my long range wish list somewhere, if anyone has any ideas about how to make that happen. So we tried to narrow down then what are the priority items that we really think we could move on. And I think for me, it started with like some personal relationships. Like I went to the laundromat, and I went to a couple. And when I went to this one that I did eventually partner with, I went in and it was very clean, and it seemed very well kept, like a family would want to be in there with giving them their business. And when I spoke with the owner and told him what I was looking to try and create, and talked with him about how kids are not in school because they don't have clean clothes. And for us, that just seemed like such a hurdle that we could figure out a way to get through for families. I have to say he was part of it. He was very touched. He was very motivated. He said, yes, I want to make this work. What can we do? What do you think would work? And how can we make it happen? He created the cards. I can show you the card. He created these cards. I think he printed them off of like Shutterfly or a print place, and labeled them all individually with numbers and loaded them up for us with the amount. When we first rolled the program out, there were a couple of glitches. I went to the laundromat first to try one on my own phone so I could make sure that it was user friendly, and it wasn't in a couple of ways. He went back to the company that he purchased this app service from. They changed some things on their end, so the card was easier to load in. So I think that level of buy-in from that end helped a lot. As far as inside of the district, I have a good relationship with people here, and I think that people here understand the level of need to a great extent. They understand the level of need that families have, and when we're talking about practical things like groceries and furniture and laundry, that wasn't as difficult as I might have thought it was going to be. And like I said, we went through a process of allowing the purchasing department to line out what the tracking needed to look like and what information we needed to gather, and how that would work best for them related to their regulations and whatever they need related to auditing for those purposes. So we agreed that we wanted to make it work, and we wanted to make sure that we put the highest level of control needed on it so it could be successful and well received across the district. And so far I think it is.
That is so helpful to hear. And I would love to circle back to your focus groups that you started with in just a minute. But while we're on the scorecard piece, we did get a question, and I knew people would be curious about this. A participant says, I'm also curious about the processes and logistics for distributing and accounting for fuel cards. If you are able to elaborate on that. So if you can share sort of what you're tracking and how you're tracking in that regard, that would be helpful.
So we're tracking the numbers on the card, the ID number for the student's ID number. If it's a family with more than one student, I usually just try to use the oldest student's ID number, and we're tracking the school building that it came out, that it was distributed to, the student's school building. And we're also tracking the parent, if the parent or the representative for the parent, whoever it was that the parent assigned to get the card, to pick up the card. We've had a few instances where we've given, with the parents' permission, we've given the cards to one of their older students. And in that case, I've just had two staff together do it rather than it's just one person handing it out. That has been the process that we've used internally. Or I will give the card to an administrator and ask an administrator to leave it, to meet with the parent when drop off or pick up when the parent's there, to make sure that there's just, so that I have the cards locked in a safe here in my office, which was also something that was required from our finance department. And there's, I think 2 people that know the code to get in, and it's been smooth, and people, I think families are grateful, but I think staff are grateful to know this is happening for families. So they've been really willing to help with like some extra checks and balances and a little more maybe record keeping than sometimes we are used to. But people have been open to helping make it work.
That's such a great point about staff being willing to go a little bit extra if they know what it's for and what the end use is. I think that's a great point. Just want to, not a question, but just kudos to you that came into the chat. Someone shared kudos on all the hard work on figuring out how to get needed services and benefits into the hands of McKinney-Vento families. Great work on the laundry service, very inspiring. And we couldn't agree more. I know when you started to walk us through the process of getting some of these things approved, you started by talking about the focus groups that you did to really discern what the needs of your families were. And I love that idea. We love that idea at SchoolHouse, and would love for you to share more, if you could, about how you went about that, what some of the questions were that you asked specifically, and then how you use that information.
I think I try to use like natural opportunities for families to connect with them and engage with them. I think it just feels a little better for me and probably for them. We have this before school and this after school care program. And so I just spent some time over there at we have a few different sites, and just so I became an opportunity for them to just check in. Did they need something? And I always try to check in with people, like, what do you need? How do you, and I do try to say sometimes, like, if I had a lot of money, what would be good? What would help you? What would you really want? And so seeing families in that environment where they're like, usually it was the afternoon one because people are coming to pick up their kid. The drop off in the morning is not a great time to reach parents and chat too much, but the pickup is, especially at the after school program, the parent has to come in and actually show their ID and sign out their child. So there's a little bit more of an opportunity there, I think, to socialize and to check in with parents about needs. We also have a food pantry that is for the whole district here, and I've used their support when they have families coming in to pick up food, or when they're delivering to families. Sometimes they're families I'm already connected to, and sometimes they're not, but they still are families in the district who have good input about needs they may have. Parent nights, activity nights in the buildings that I would go to. We did things like a coat distribution. So we had kind of a drop-in coat, hat, winter gear distribution. So I worked or volunteered at that and got a chance to hear from families about things that they need. We have had a large population recently of new families and new students coming to us from other countries. And I have a strong relationship with the director of world language here. And not every time, but many times when a student is coming in to be registered, oftentimes they have been McKinney-Vento eligible. And so I've met with the family, the student, the interpreter, and that is always a really eye-opening experience about a family who literally just arrived. What do they need? So I think just question, really, what do you need? How can we help? What could we do? Those really have been kind of the first level of questions that we've really tried to ask people. And I also pump people for information, the administrators, the mental health staff. What are you hearing from people? What do they want? What could we do? Which has been eye-opening as well, because I think from different viewpoints, people think families need different things, or people are hearing different pieces, which is helpful.
That is amazing to hear. And I always am just amazed at the work that liaisons do and how you make your time and capacity stretch. So thank you so much for walking us through some of that. We got another question about store cards, and then another question about your ARP HCY funds. So the first one about store cards asks, how did you determine how many store cards and gas cards to purchase? And do those cards have to be distributed by the expiration date of the grant? Or if you have extras, can they be used next year as well? And can ARP HCY funds be used to purchase clothing and activity items? So Jackie, would love for you to weigh in on that first part about how many you knew how to purchase, and then certainly welcome you to answer those last parts, but then I'll invite our schoolhouse team to answer the allowable use question as well.
I did a lot of guessing about store cards, and I've reordered a few times, which has been helpful. Because I didn't want to put a lot of money into something that maybe wasn't going to work logistically that I thought would work. So I've reordered laundry cards a few times, and I'm about to reorder some more store cards. We haven't used the money we set aside, all the money we set aside for store cards, we haven't used yet, partially because we just wanted to pace it and see where the best place was to spend the rest of it. So I think start as small as you think, but if we have a family of 5 kids and 2 parents that just had a house fire, I'm giving them $100 of laundry right off the bat, because they have 7 people that they're doing laundry for, or at least the 5 kids that they're doing laundry for. I have a mom that stopped in yesterday to ask if I had any more laundry cards, and I last gave her laundry cards in the beginning of September, and I said sure. So I gave her $50 of laundry cards, and she took some extra soap, like some laundry soap. So I think depending on the volume of what the need is, but I ordered a small amount. I think I ordered 50 cards probably at first, and then I've gone back a couple of times to order more.
That is very helpful. Thank you for that. I'm going to invite Karen in, and Barbara too, if Barbara wants to. But the second part of this question was, do those store cards and gas cards have to be distributed by the expiration date of the grant? Or if you have extras, can they be used next year as well? So from the federal regulation ARP HCY perspective, Karen, want to invite you to address that.
Yeah, absolutely. So they must be purchased by September 30th of 2024, and then can be used in that 3-month period afterwards, and have to be used by purchased by September 30th, 24, and used by January 30th of 2025.
And I'll just add, we have heard the U.S. Department of Education explicitly encourage school districts to stockpile those store cards, particularly since that September 30th, 2024 obligation deadline is running right up into the winter months. And so you might want to, like Jackie has been able to acquire those Goodwill store cards. That might be the perfect timing for families to be able to use those before that January 30th liquidation deadline. And Barbara, I saw you come off mute.
Yes. So, and the other kind of wild card, that's the store cards, and wild card in all of this is that we expect to hear sometime either later this month or early next year, January-ish, if states will be able to sort of apply for what's called extended liquidation for ARP HCY. And in that case, if the state applies on behalf of school districts and if the Department of Education approves it, then that would extend the period that store cards, gas cards, laundry cards could be used potentially to March of 2026. So they would still have to be purchased by September, obligated by September 2024. So that's to keep that in mind, but just to stay tuned about that potential for late liquidation, because it would make a big difference for things like store cards.
And then thank you, Barbara. And then Karen, I'm going to come back to you for the last part of this question, which is the more general uses, allowable uses question. Can ARP HCY funds be used to purchase clothing or activity items?
Absolutely. So we want to make sure that we're removing barriers for our students. And so anything that they need for school, whether that's supplies for a certain class or just kind of those general school supplies, school clothing, winter gear, supplies that they may need for extracurricular activities as well, and for that full participation in extracurricular activities, those are all allowable. So the funds can be used to be removing those barriers, whether that's again on the side of school supplies or up through that participation and what they need for those extracurriculars and kind of everything in between.
Thank you very much for that. Jackie, I want to come back to you. First, another kudos, awesome work. And the person says, thanks for sharing. Did you use ARP HCY funds to hire staff to support your McKinney-Vento program? And if so, can you please speak to your plan to advocate for maintaining those positions?
I have not used that, but I'm hopeful to use the remaining piece. But I don't have a good answer for how to maintain it afterwards. I'm just hoping that we can figure something out. I think this is a population that people are becoming more and more aware of, which is terrific, because I think it's hopefully going to lead to, hopefully it will lead to a place where in a school district or in a school building, it's very common to have someone that supports this type of need in it. That's what I'm hoping.
And I'll just say too, we're very late in I'm sure if people are reading the headlines, our Congress is not particularly functional at this point in time, has kicked the can on the budget for 2024 till next year. But shortly after that, will be work on the 2025 federal budget. And we would love your help in advocating for McKinney-Vento Education for Homeless Children and Youth Funds, because really the ARP level is the level it should be. It should be the level it should start at that level. So we will, again, we're late in the process this year. Probably the funds are going to be the same for McKinney-Vento for FY24, but FY25 is another year. So again, please sign up for our legislative alerts and help us with that.
Absolutely. And sticking with the staffing question just for a moment, Karen, I know you are in touch with the broader field, and so would love to invite you to share anything on that front.
Yeah, one piece of advice that I've heard from so many people that I've talked with is just the importance of collecting data on the impact that the positions are having, and being able to really take that data and use that as an advocacy or leverage tool in your districts to say, look at the difference this has made in our graduation rates, or look at the difference this has made with our attendance. and making sure that you've got that both kind of from a numbers perspective, but then also that anecdotal data as well, and hearing from families about the impact that that's had. And so many people have shared with me that they have kind of their own process and system for kind of gathering that data, and then taking it to different people within their district to say, what district funds do we have available? How can we braid funds with other funding sources? What other grants are out there? How can we make sure that we're appropriately allocating funds from either our Title I set aside or other grants that they have, such as Title IV or Title III, and really braiding and using those funds together to support students experiencing homelessness. But it's all based on that data collection and being able to really show the impact that that position has had.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. I want to acknowledge a couple things. One, I saw someone had their hand raised. We don't have the ability to unmute participants. And so we encourage you, if you do have a question, to put it in the Q&A box or in the chat box, and we'll be sure to read that out loud and address it. Someone did ask in the chat, who can apply for these funds? And so just to back us up a little bit, these are American Rescue Plan Homeless Children and Youth Funds that we have been discussing today. Those have gone out largely to school districts. Every school district in the country has the opportunity to utilize these funds. And so we encourage you, if you are your district liaison, check with your finance people and make sure that any available funds that you're aware of and making a plan for those. If you're not your liaison, then we encourage you to contact your district liaison to see how they might be planning to use these funds. And just to reiterate again, these funds are available for obligation through September 30th, 2024, and for liquidation through the end of January 2025. And we do have some resources on the Schoolhouse Connection website that we can drop a link in the chat for, going over what these funds cover, the allowable uses, and lots of examples from the field of how districts have been able to make good use of these funds. Got a question here that I'll put out as a toss-up. This is a popular one that we get. Can ARP HCY funds be used to pay for driver's ed?
Happy to weigh in on this one as well. So these are allowable as long as it's, again, reasonable and necessary. So we kind of want to always go back to using that phrase and to think about how we're spending funds through that lens. But if this is the best way to provide transportation and to have students get to school and participate in school and in extracurricular activities, then it is allowable. And so again, looking at kind of all options and all available transportation possibilities, which I know are very limited in many places. But then if this is the best and most effective way to provide that for students, it is an allowable cost.
Thank you very much, Karen. Jackie, another question that we wanted to pose to you is sort of even just anecdotally. I know data is hard to come by these days, but looking back at all these amazing programs and resources you've been able to offer through your ARP HCY funds, what are you hearing from families about the difference that that's making, whether it's my child can now attend school regularly, or, talk about the difference that you're seeing these funds making in your district?
I think the before school and after school care has been really helpful. When we only, just to clarify, we don't give it to every kid. We just give it to families when they've expressed a need, or when our transportation department, based on the location of the student's temporary address, needs to bring them in early or keep them late. But I think most families that we come across are looking for support in so many places, and I think a lot of families feel like they've tried to get support in different places and it's not been helpful, or it's failed them, or they haven't been able to get the follow through. So I think if you are able to say to a parent, I can get you laundry cards and some soap and dryer sheets with, is that helpful? We have that available. And when you actually do that and follow through on that, I think it's building a bigger bridge and it's building a stronger relationship with families. And I don't have the answer for everything, but I can take some of those small pieces and help, which I know families are very grateful for and appreciative of that. And I've seen families, if I look at the attendance for the following day or the next few days, there are their kids in school. So I'm hopeful that is going to be, a long-standing indicator for their success for school, but also just that kids understand that you can have a barrier, figure something out, get some help, and then, resume what your job is, which is to be in school.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm looking at our clock. We don't have any more questions. And so I'm never one to prolong a full hour just to say we've been here a full hour. But I do want to offer just our deep, heartfelt thanks and gratitude to Jackie for being here today and sharing what you have been able to accomplish with your ARP HCY funds. And just when I said that, a question came into our Q&A box. And so I want to make sure we're doing our due diligence here. So I'll read this out loud. The participant says, we've had many parents and guardians that can't take students to school because of their cars breaking down. We do have bus passes available. We've been able to provide other modes of transportation depending on the route, but we were looking to partner with an auto shop to repair cars, but each shop didn't want to create a purchase order with us. Any suggestions? Ooh, that's a good one. That's a really good, juicy one. I love the idea of partnering with an auto repair shop, and I'm sorry to hear that the purchase order was an issue. And so I'm gonna toss this one out to our Schoolhouse Brain Trust to see if we have any suggestions.
One thing that we've heard is the idea of having a credit card that's specifically linked to the ARP HCY funds. And so being able to use that credit card, knowing that you have the funds through the ARP HCY funding source to pay that credit card off. And so liaisons will have access to actually just being able to purchase and pay for things with that specific credit card.
I was looking quickly. I know in our spotlights, the Anchorage School District in Anchorage, Alaska, really focused on those car repairs. And so there's a great example there. I can't copy and paste it. No, it's on the link. If you go to the link that Aaron put in the chat box, the American Rescue Plan, our page there, and you scroll down to the spotlights and you click on transportation, you'll see the Anchorage School District in a really cool way that they were able to kind of work with their business office and handle some of those car repairs that were more cost effective, than other ways of ways of dealing with transportation.
Great thoughts. And this has sparked more questions and ideas. So I want to make sure we're reading those out. Just to acknowledge, we totally understand in the chat one participant shared, many school districts, including mine, don't allow for a P card, wish there was more consistency. We totally hear you. And we're always happy to brainstorm ways to get to this use without a P card if it's not available to you. And then there's another follow-up question that says, so all credit card purchases should be used / paid off by January 30th, 2025. And so this gets into our obligation and liquidation deadlines. And so I am definitely going to lean on our Schoolhouse Brain Trust for this one.
Well, Barbara, I was hoping that you would weigh in, but I'm also happy to. So we want to make sure that the materials are purchased by that date. And so by the September 30th, 2024 date. So again, purchasing by that date, then they can be used after that. So Barbara, if you have other thoughts and want to weigh in, I would also welcome.
Well, no, just to say this question came up, and I don't mean be totally cheeky on a recorded webinar. But I mean, the question came up recently at the NACCE conference too. The cards have to be purchased by September 2024. We need to say that. In terms of like how they're used or paid off, if they're distributed to families, like who's going to track that? Like who's keeping track of that? So if it's a situation where you're purchasing the store cards or gas cards or whatever, and you're distributing to families, then that has to happen by January 2025. But if it's a situation where you're, providing them to families are mobile, families move, I have no idea how that's actually going to be tracked. So.
That's helpful. And I think I misinterpreted this. In my head, I was thinking all credit card purchases that are on the district's credit card for goods and services for families, but I think it's relatively the same thing. So that's helpful. There's another question that came in for you, Jackie, about store cards, asking if you require proof of how the store cards are spent, any receipts, anything like that.
We have not required proof of how the Goodwill cards are spent. I have for like a Walmart or a Target, I've done a couple of different things. I've had parents create just a wish list and put it in a cart, a cart on the website, and then sent it to me. And I've just purchased with, a Walmart card and had it all shipped to them or shipped to me, or, and that way I paid for it, so I know what we spent it on. We've also done things like, just met someone at the gas station and used the card to fill their gas tank up. We have interns, and that always seems like a great intern job. Like, sure, I'll go to the gas station and meet somebody with the school social worker, and we'll go together and meet and use the card to pay for the gas. But I could see a situation where if you require the receipts, or we've gone shopping with people before, like we'll meet at Walmart and the parent will select what they want, and then we'll be able to have the receipt from them.
That's really helpful. We've been hearing more lately of your adding items to an online cart strategy. And again, depending upon the district and what's available and what's required in terms of tracking, that could be a good option as well. We have another general ARP HCY usage question that I'm going to pop over to Karen. The question is, can we use ARP funds for a temporary tutor to serve our McKinney-Vento students?
Absolutely. So that is an allowable use. We want to make sure that we're providing that academic support for students. Having, whether that's, we've heard that it's bringing someone in to tutor from outside the school community, adding extended hours or paying stipends to school staff to do that tutoring. That's another great way to accomplish that. So yes, tutoring is an allowable expense. Can I just say one more thing about the P cards, if you don't mind my jumping back to that? I do want to say that we have heard from several places that they have leveraged partnerships with the Education Foundation in their school district. And this has been a really effective way because the Education Foundations, so I believe these are other organizations, they're like a nonprofit that helps provide funding to the school district. They have different purchasing flexibility than school districts do. And so there are several school districts that have partnered with our Education Foundation to purchase things through the foundation that are allowable under ARP and then paid for by those ARP HCY funds. And so if you're not connected with your Education Foundation, that might be another great partnership to kind of figure out if there's any flexibility with navigating, doing some of that spending.
Love that suggestion. Another question that came in, the participant says, I'm new to this position, so I'm unfamiliar with this grant. Will I be required to report how these funds are used? And we definitely encourage any school district liaisons to first check with your state education agency, your state McKinney-Vento coordinator, to really understand what those requirements are for budgeting and spending reporting. And if you want to reach out to us, we're happy to answer any questions about the federal requirements for ARP HCY as well. I am checking our chat and our Q&A because the last time I said I was going to call it, that's when all the questions came in. And so I want to make sure that we are doing our due diligence and answering everyone's question. That is what we are here for. And we do still have some time left in the hour. I also want to read out another example of the gas station allowable use. Someone says, we meet up with students and families at gas stations and fuel them up. We also meet them at Walmart or Aldi to let them shop, or we go shopping for them and deliver the items. So there again, just finding ways to make it happen based on your particular district. Someone else shared, when is the date of spending all the monies again for our federal ARP HCY funds? The obligation deadline is September 30th of 2024, and the liquidation deadline is January 30th of 2025. So making sure you have all of your items purchased by that September 30th date and used by that January date in 2025. And we encourage you to use up this money now. There are so many urgent needs in our communities and school districts. So please do make sure you're checking on those available balances to you and making sure you are exhausting all of your allowable use options with these funds. I want to thank Jackie again. I'm precariously saying thank you and leading into our closing. I will remind our participants that we will be sending you a recording of this webinar along with the slides that have links to SchoolHouse resources as follow-up to our session today. And we encourage you to reach out to us. Check out our website, schoolhouseconnection.org. You can fill out our Q&A form on that website, and we are more than happy to answer any questions you have. But lastly, and most importantly, Jackie, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for everything you're doing, all the amazing things you're doing in your school district to support children, youth, and families experiencing homelessness.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.